Hello?
Is that the Tasmanian Tiger Centre?
Yes, James Malley speaking.
Oh, it's Bob Wall from Ulverston speaking, James. I think I've seen the Tasmanian tiger.
Oh, great. What part of the country?
Well, I was coming down from down the Lake Road this afternoon, and I saw this thing on the side of the road. I wouldn't have even given it a second look, except I saw some stripes. They were sort of a browny colour on a yellowy fur.
James Malley and Jeremy Griffith held an exhibition in Launceston in 1972 to get publicity. It was a great success, and the phones ran hot. Wherever possible, the leads received there and in this office were followed up, but the men had to watch their budget. By now, they'd got their camping expenses down to $2 a day, but money was so short that even that was a big expense. Many times over the past 5 years, their work had ground to a halt, to pick up again when a new backer was found. A record was kept of every reported sighting and of every search. Some of the sightings were from the northwest, but most from the northeast, and nearly all in rough going.
A lot of the old bushmen told me that if I wanted to find tigers, I had to go down the Arthur River, and I'd track them along the banks. And being determined to investigate every possibility, I decided I'd go and have a look. The idea was that the wallabies, when they're chased by a dog or something, always run to water to make their final stand. Therefore, you should be able to track the tigers where they chase the wallabies to the water. And I tried to get a canoe or something. That wasn't possible, so I got a tractor tube in the end and just sat in that. And it worked very well. And took off and wandered down the river. Actually, it was far too fast. There were no mud flats. It was to find any tracks, so it didn't really succeed as a tiger search, but I did the job. James stood on the bank, and he thought I was going to sink, and he was really excited. He took photographs, and I took off, and he thought he'd never see me again, and I went zooming and just swirling around. You've got no control. You just get swung round and round. But you go along just like a bubble rather than being shot forward like a canoe. You just go along like a bubble on the surface of the water, and as long as there's plenty of current, it's a fabulous way to travel. And for days and days, just drifted along. Tasmania's got a reputation as having some of the most rugged bush in the world. In fact, Edmund Hillary, who conquered Everest, described it as some of the most difficult to penetrate that he'd ever encountered. And this is because of the peculiar horizontal scrub and the barrow vine, especially those two. And it's very dense in places, and it's just impossible in places to get through. In the southwest, we got caught in a tea tree barrow swamp, and we had to get through. We couldn't go back. We had hardly any food. We had to get across the coast. There's no roads down there. No people lived down there. And it was sort of life and death, it really was, and the adrenaline was pumping through our bodies, and we were taking an alternative. And the only way we could move was to fall over onto the scrub. This is every bushwalker in Tasmania's experience, is fall over into the bush and sort of flatten it, and then get up and scramble on and fall down again, and just take an alternative. James would go in front. He, being a bit bigger than I was doing a bit better than I was, but we'd go, and it was a very slow progress, and we were lucky to get out of that.
This little poster that I noticed on the wall, which says, "If a Tasmanian tiger you should find, you'll know by the stripes on his behind. Approach him politely, be very kind, and ask him if he'd really mind. Before you tell, do stop and think, perhaps he'd rather stay extinct." Now that's rather humorous. What's your...
That's a very good point, and that's held by a lot of people. The trouble is, and it's confounded our efforts a little bit, the trouble is that in reality, although there's obvious risks that arise if you locate the animal, the risks by not locating them far outweigh the others. Now, some of the risks, 1080 I mentioned, just the basic encroachment of human development in these areas. Now, we've found that there's, for instance, that there's hardly a substantial game area left undisturbed in this state. Now, we've got to know where the tiger is and its circumstances to do anything about saving it. If they're okay, there could be circumstances back in the bush in some remote area and it's not being disturbed, but the fact is that the snares are way back and all sorts of hydroelectric schemes are penetrating the last fringes of the unknown.